Can't hear you.
Okay. Hey everybody, it's
wait,
Mark Masters. It's Monday night. It's time for Always Bookin Comedy. We got Doug Key. He's trying to figure out his sound right now. We're figuring it out. And let me chat with you. Here we go. We are live. And,
should I leave and come back in, you think?
You could try it. You could try it. Okay. Or you could just read my lips.
Are you live right now?
Yeah, we're live right now.
Oh, God damn it.
Yeah. Just we'll figure it out.
All right.
We'll figure it out.
Let's see.
How good are you at reading lips?
You want to hear something funny? It was just my laptop was muted.
Oh, does it work now?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Oh, hey, heck yeah. All right, everybody.
I'm sorry about that. I'm
okay.
Yeah, I'm dumb.
For the record, Doug was on time / early.
I was early.
We have a real hard time getting folks to show up on time. So kudos to Doug, real pro. You joining us from Rhode Island? Does that sound right?
Yeah, I'm in Massachusetts right now. I just moved to Mass, so neighboring state.
Nice.
Yeah.
So I don't know a ton about you, Doug. I've seen you headline shows, very funny. I've seen you host shows at the Rogue Island Comedy Festival. And I know you have a pretty fancy special that just came out. So we'll talk about all those things. Let's start with like show running, or let's start with how did you get into comedy in the first place? Like what, how long ago, etc.
I started in 2009, and there was in my town, like many comedians who start, there's no scene in their town. So I saw an ad in a paper for a comedy class, which, they get a bad rep, but they definitely accelerate the process of learning all like the etiquette stuff that you don't know, like moving the mic stand out of the way and whatnot, things like that. So that was my first time.
Now that you're 2009, let me do the math. 11, 15. That's like 15 years. You're a veteran.
I think 13. I'm in my 14th, but I've done it 13 years. Yeah.
Okay. All right. More than a decade. A long time. You know what you're doing. Would you say now that you're this far removed from doing that class, like, would you tell yourself to take that class again? Do you think it was worth it?
I would. And, when you're a few years in, you hear comics, you hear all the muttering of like, oh, you shouldn't take a class. They're just washed up comics trying to take advantage of, it's like, well, it's the same thing as a bringer show. I look at it like that. Like some bringer shows can be predatory or whatever. But if you think about it, a bringer show is just a smaller scale version of how you get booked as a headliner. You need to bring people. You need to get a draw. Yeah. So in a way, it's kind of like the same thing, just your first taste of getting booked because you can bring people.
Yeah. That's a good way of looking at it. That's a positive spin.
Exactly. So
nice. What are a couple of highlights that helped you from that comedy class?
Honestly, joke structure, because before I started, like a lot of comics, I just wrote in notebooks, free form, word for word. I would talk into a voice recorder, and I just had so much fat and on everything I wrote. It was just so many unnecessary words, so many unnecessary lines. And the first class was basically say the most with the least. And, obviously Henny Youngman's classic, Take My Wife, Please, was the example of how to write a joke. Just like the shortest joke ever with the least amount of words, and making it hit, because you only have 3 to 5 minutes, when you're new. So what are you going to stand there and be like, so where did I go to today? I went to the DMV, you know what I mean? Like, so those are the things that classes are good for.
Yeah. Awesome. Cool. So you started a long time ago. When did you start your first show? Do you remember?
Like producing my first show?
Yeah. Like producing.
I started maybe 2 years in, I want to say. And it was at a coffee shop. And it was doing well, and I needed a bigger venue. So I moved to this small little black box theater. It was like a BYOB venue. I did like a 10:30 p.m. show once a month, and it would sell out every month because it was the only comedy show in my hometown. Okay. And it was a BYOB show. People were bringing like boxes of wine and 30 packs of beer for a 90-minute show. I'm like, what are you booze bags doing? But it's a big bar town, Yeah. And that's where I learned how to like deal with drunk hecklers, and because I would host that too. And also hosting a show early on, that's how you get a lot of gigs, obviously.
Right.
The unofficial show trading thing. But hey, that's part of the game.
Right.
Especially when you're desperate for stage time, you know. But
yeah, what kind of thing? So it sounds like that first show was pretty successful. You kind of like
it
went on a
was.
rocket ship from the beginning. What are some of the lessons you learned running that show?
Well, I mean, a lot of the shows I did before producing my own show, I was taking notes of like mostly what not to do. Like,
Okay.
you know what I mean? Like, there's so
Yeah.
many things where you're like, okay, I can't have the bar near the stage. I can't, you know, you got to have good lighting, good sound, a wired mic, not a wireless.
Okay.
Have the
Turn
room
off
set
the
up. Yeah,
TVs.
exactly. Tell people where the bathrooms are so they're not chatting. But yeah, that's those are the things that I learned early on for sure.
Okay. Was the transition to the theater difficult, or were you immediately at capacity again?
We were at capacity. Started selling out every month again. You know, some months were better than others. Like, you know, summer months die down, and you learn that quickly. Like, oh, people don't want to be inside at 7, 8 o'clock at night
Right.
in
I
July.
learned that last summer. I learned that lesson hard. I was
Yeah,
killing it all winter, and I like lined up all these headliners, promised a ton of money, and paid all the money, and
right.
lined up all these shows, and I just like could not get people to buy tickets like I could when it was dark
Mhm.
outside. But
Yeah, that's when you kind of have to take a look at like who's local, who can bring a few people. Like,
right,
you know,
yeah,
so you got to look
yeah.
at it from a
I'm
business
definitely
point of view.
this summer. I'm running less shows and kind of looking towards more local
Yeah,
headliners when I can. Yeah,
and that's totally fine. That's what a lot of comedy clubs do. You know,
yeah, that's
back
true.
before this little boom that we're in, that's what it was. It was like, you know, the fall and the spring and in the winter were all like the, you know, comics who weren't on their summer tours, and the summers were all like the local acts that, you know, could bring everyone that's just going stir crazy inside,
Right.
you know.
Okay, so you're a pretty prolific show producer at this point. Like, when did you
That's a
decide?
very nice word to prolific.
When did you grow from one show to more than one show? And
Well,
why
when
did
I
you
was doing,
decide to do that?
yeah, when I was doing the that monthly show at the theater in Newport, because it was selling out, I was actually moving to New York, and I was like, you know what, I'm going to do my last one, and it sold out, and I was like, let's add another one. So I added a second show of my monthly, and that sold out, and I'm like, all right, well, I'm moving to New York. I'm selling out these shows in my hometown. This is a big tourist destination. Like, why don't I make it a point to start coming home, you know, and do a festival and like do multiple shows in a weekend, call it a fest, you know, have different venues in true festival fashion.
Yeah.
And that was kind of like my first, you know, revelation of like, oh, I can sell tickets. Why don't I just like, you know, put the festival flag on it?
Right. Yeah. So tell us about Rogue Island Comedy Festival. How long has that been going on?
That started in 2015. So that was like pretty much the year after I moved to New York.
Okay. So next year is a big year for you.
Yeah. Well, we're currently in our 10th annual year.
Oh, okay.
Right.
Nice.
So we started doing that. We did it the first time, not thinking it was actually going to be. Nobody can predict that their festival is going to be an annual thing. You hope it's successful enough to where you can do a year or two.
Right.
You know. So it was very well received. I actually started a Kickstarter to like get local engagement, to get the community involved. Like they're kind of backing this new event,
Mhm.
and there's no donations. You're actually just getting your tickets in advance with like a free t-shirt.
Right.
So it was a good way to
That's
like,
smart.
yeah, it was a good way to like start something and like get the community more involved rather than just like, hey, come to this event. It's like, no, you're a backer of this,
Right.
you know. And then yeah, it was successful. So we started again, and then
So
we kept it
tell
going.
me, how was it different than running a single show? Like, what were some of the complications in?
Well, the first year we tried to keep it all even with no overlapping times, four nights, 10 shows or 8 shows rather. And we the only complications we ran into was like at the time we had advanced credit card sales and then tickets at the door, like cash. So the POS system dealing with people checking in, people that are just like, how much is the show? Can I get tickets? Like that was a nightmare, but COVID kind of like reset that system, and it was just like online only. Everything's online. If
Got it.
somebody shows up to the show now and they go, I want tickets, go on the website and buy tickets.
Right.
So it's all, you know, hands-free transactions.
Okay. So the like point of sale stuff was complicated. Was marketing difficult? Was it hard to fill 8 shows?
It wasn't really hard. There were certain time slots that weren't selling as quicker, and that's when you don't know which days are the hot days, you know. We do it on a holiday weekend, so we get away with doing Sunday night shows too, which are very popular on holiday weekends with Mondays off.
Right.
But I remember the Thursday show did pretty well, the early show, and then the late show was very light. I remember Sam Morrill was our very first headliner.
Wow.
The very first festival on Thursday. He did it upstairs of this restaurant. It was like 150 seater, and the first show was sold out. And this is before he had like a big draw, obviously, but he was like, well established headliner.
Sure.
He comes up, and I had him booked to headline the 2 kickoff shows. It was like 8 and a 10. 8 sold out. 10 was like very sparsely attended. And I remember Sam coming up to me in the back, and I don't think he knew it was like, he thought it was a festival. So he's like, oh, I can go anywhere, right? So he's like, hey, you mind if I go first? And then so I can drive back to the city. I had to have that moment with him where I'm like, oh man, you're actually like a proper headliner on this.
Right.
Because I had been opening for him for a little while, and I texted him. I was like, hey, I'll give you this much money to come up. And he was like, sure. But he probably just thought he was doing like a spot and then going back.
Right. That's funny. So was it any complications with having lots more comics? Because there are way more comics involved in a 3-4 day festival, right?
Yeah, it's honestly, it's easy enough to deal with comics doing their spots, getting to spots on time. I'm pretty regimented with like putting, my contact information, call me as soon as you get into town, just so I know. So they're easy enough to keep track of. The biggest thing is, as a comic myself, if I'm traveling to a festival, I don't want to spend a ton of money on lodging. So I made it a point to everybody that was traveling like greater than 3 hours away from the town it's in, I would like give them a place to stay. So the biggest thing was like managing lodging accommodations. Like, I got hotel rooms, like Airbnb. So I'm like, all right, I think these 3 girls can be in this house by themselves, and I'll put these 2 slobs together in a hotel room. And I'm like, I guess they'll just have to be friends. So just manage. And then some people would drop out. One person would be like, actually, I do need a place to stay. So that was like the biggest thing I learned how to prepare early, is like only have X amount of spots or sleeping accommodations. And you can only accept that many comics per night that need
lodging.
So
in that first year, did you take submissions?
No, we didn't feel like we earned the, respect of the comedy community enough to like charge for submissions. So we did 2 years of invite only, and it went well. It was very well received. We had a lot of great feedback from comics, and we thought that we were getting like all sorts of inquiries and requests like via email, like enough to where it's like, oh, this needs to be like a separate job,
right?
To have somebody like eventually get to a point where you're just receiving tons of and some are good and some are not. And you're like, all right, well, we could sit here and weed through these tapes all day and we might not find the person, but now it's at a point where like the 3rd year we accepted submissions, and we're getting more each time, and like higher quality too. Like people are submitting,
it's unbelievable.
People are submitting their late night sets, their don't tell sets. And you're like, oh, okay. So
yeah, it gives me a panic attack. I'm on the verge of sending out rejection letters to people who have Comedy Central credits and have albums playing on Sirius. It's insane.
Yeah, I know.
It's like, oh,
I know. You can't. That's what people. I wish I could go back in time and tell myself, like, don't take a rejection like to heart, because we can't even accept all the people who we genuinely liked.
Oh, of course.
But everybody kind of has to get
group that is totally qualified to get into the festival, and it's just like random luck, but based on committee scoring, like who gets into our festival.
Yeah, there are actually very few where you're like, "What? This person is delusional." You know what I mean? Most of them are.
No, that's not true for me at all. Maybe you're doing something right, but there's also a big chunk.
No, I'm not. Yeah.
Like filming, I hear from the committee all the time. Like I read their notes, and it's like this guy's in a car filming himself, and his Uber passenger is talking to him mid-set. Like, what is going on here?
Oh yeah, no, I had a guy that was just reviewing weed in his bed with his shirt off.
We had somebody this year submit a 3-hour video of a purple pulsing blob with like EDM music.
All right.
They obviously they made a cut and paste there.
Yeah. I mean, I do make it a point to say we are seeking seasoned, polished, seasoned comics.
Yeah.
And I guess that definition varies between people.
Well, I mean, I remember when I got started, like you felt like you were doing something for your career if you were applying. And there was a little delusion in there as well.
Yeah, you kind of just I don't know how many buzzer beater deadline videos I submitted thinking like, this is it. Just I made the deadline, I'm in, baby. And then by then the people watching the tapes have watched 300, 400, and they're like, yeah, no, that one doesn't do it.
Right. But do you have any advice or thoughts on weeding through submission videos or the submission process? Any tips for comics applying to festivals?
I'd say, a lot of comics stress about the quality, video quality. As long as it's good audio, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like you don't have to have the highest resolution. It doesn't have to be a 3-camera shoot. You don't worry about that. Just make sure the camera's steady and, it's not in the back by the waitress stand where they're, exchanging the dirty glasses for the clean glasses. Yeah, don't do that. Cut out the whole host intro. Just get right into the joke. Yeah. Make sure the first 3 minutes of your tape is the strongest stuff. I know that you're going to run that 5 minutes somewhere, right? And you might have that big closer at the end of the 5 minutes. Well, if somebody's watching a tape where, they get to the 3-minute mark and they're like, okay, but that killer joke is at that 5-minute mark, then there's a chance that it was a wasted opportunity. So if you're submitting a submission tape, customize it for the person that is watching your tape, needing to get their attention in that first, minute, even 2 minutes.
Right. Yeah.
You know what I mean? There are times where like a comic will riff on the room or whatever. And like, I always give it enough time, but somebody who's watched hundreds and thousands of submission tapes, like you need to, like we can know even if you don't watch them, if somebody's seasoned within the first 30 seconds. You could tell from their body language, their overall stage presence, their cadence, their projection. So you really have to like know what seasoned is. Watch other submission tapes, watch late night sets.
Yeah, that's a good tip. That's a good one. Do you have a favorite late night set?
Well, to bring up Sam again, when I was opening for him years ago in North Carolina, he was the whole weekend. He would start his hour doing a 5-minute Conan set because he was slated to do Conan like for his, I don't know, 3rd time, maybe 4th time, and he just kept doing that 5-minute tight set before the whole hour just to like get it done. And that was probably one of the best late night sets I've seen. It was great. I think it was like 2016 Conan, Sam Morril Conan, if you look that up.
Huh. Nice. Awesome. All right. So your festival expanded well, also tell us about you had an incident with a hotel.
Oh yeah.
Let's hear that story. That's a good
one.
Well,
since COVID ended, because there was a date where it ended, apparently, according to the government, where everything opened at full capacity. It was in 2021. The date it opened, like the world reopened, was a holiday week. It was Memorial Day weekend, end of May. So I go, all right, well, we already do the festival, in October over the holiday weekend. So why don't we just take the same formula, duplicate it? And
I didn't realize October was the first one. So Columbus Day weekend.
Yeah, Columbus Day weekend was the original festival. Okay. And then the Spring Fest, just that kind of was birthed during after COVID.
Okay.
So again, but there was still, restrictions and whatnot. So we did it under a tent in 2021. Okay. But all those shows sold out because it was like, it opened when everybody was like stir crazy. Yeah. They wanted to go out and they're like, oh, live comedy. Hell yeah. So ever since then, we're like, you know what? Newport's such a touristy destination town that we're always going to have, if not more foot traffic in May now. So we kept the original October, and then the spring has been a welcomed addition to that.
Nice. Okay, so the hotel. There was
sorry. So I think it was our second spring festival. or third. We had a hotel booked to be one of our venues for the shows and the home to a lot of our comics that weekend. So literally 2 days before the fest, I'm like stressed out. I'm like, all right, I'm going to go get a massage. So I went and got a massage. I'm leaving the massage. I'm like, all right, festival kicks off in 2 days. I feel good. I look at my phone from, the last hour of not looking at it. And it's just like 20 people sending me news stories of our venue on fire, just up in flames. Here I was completely decompressed. And then it's just like, hey, is this the hotel you're using for the festival? It's just like engulfed. Five-star alarm, whatever it's called, five alarm fire.
5-alarm fire. Yeah.
5-alarm fire. Yeah, actually, but I did all these local news stations because they hit me up and they were like, hey, you're running a festival. It was supposed to be there. So I got so much press out of that fire because we rebooked the shows at like different venues, thankfully. And then it was the first time in my whole Facebook career I've ever went on Facebook and been like, does anybody have an Airbnb or a spare bedroom for comics to sleep in that weekend? And I got so many people that were like, they can use my bedroom, they can use my farmhouse, they can use my tub.
That's great.
Yeah, and then another venue kind of came through for us, and it was good. But yeah, all the news stations were interviewing me, and one lady was like, that must have been quite alarming for you. And I was like, it was 5-star alarming. 5 alarm. No, I said it was 5-alarm alarming. I fucked that up.
Or whatever.
Yeah.
That's amazing. What a story. And the festival went great.
It went great. Yeah. I mean, it was a stressful 48 hours trying to replace the venues, trying to find lodging for comics, but it was tough. I mean, you really have to make game time decisions. You can't panic. You just got to think, all right, we just need another place that has a microphone and a power cord and can accommodate X amount of people.
Yeah. Did you ever run shows in New York City?
I did. Yeah.
What was that
I
like?
ran a show in the Village. It's called the Comedy Shop now, but it used to be the Village Lantern. And it was like an underground room.
Is that the Maisel place? Miss Maisel?
Oh no, I think they shot at
Gaslight or something. Something like Lantern.
Yeah. But I think it was like the Bitter End, maybe.
Okay.
I forget. It's one of those Village bars. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. But yeah, it's like right around the corner from the Comedy Cellar, which is always sold out. So
you get
that's where all the other free shows were. The Grizzly Pear, the Village Lantern. I think Greenwich Village Comedy Club is around the corner. So it's just the Comedy Village. Yeah.
You're getting the sloppy seconds.
Yeah. It was my first time doing a free show that I had to bark for. So that was like quite humbling to be, 5-6 years into comedy at that point, and I'm on this corner begging people to come into the show.
Jeez.
It's but it really makes you appreciate audiences, big and small, because when you got 6 people to your free show, basement show, you were psyched. You're like, this is 6 humans to hear my jokes.
Huh.
You know what I mean? It's like a different.
What a difference from your Newport show. Like what a roller coaster. To go from, hey, I can sell this out easy every month to I got to beg people to get into this show.
That's why it's like you got to you're starting over when you move to New York. Like that's why a lot of old road dogs they won't thrive in New York because they're just used to these like sold out VFW halls and and that's for anybody, not just old road dogs, but anybody that stays in one city too long is going to become that big fish in the pond or whatever, and refuse to perform in front of 5 people. They're going to kind of think that's beneath them.
Right.
But those 5 people sat in a chair and they're listening. So,
Yeah. Let's talk about the road. You got any good, fun road stories or tragic road stories, good or bad?
I mean, I just had a great trip with Norman in Europe. We kind of like bounced from country to country, and it was my first.
Have you been to Europe before?
I'd never done Europe, no. But he's he's got to a point where he's like, got these big followings in like major cities. So I kind of just shot him a text, and I asked him if I could do one city with him, and he just asked me to do the whole like back 9 of the tour, and I was like, oh, sure, yeah, no, I'll clear my schedule. It was like 3 weeks, and it was like Amsterdam, Belgium, Germany, Ireland, Scotland, London, and then we like took an impromptu trip to Paris because we had like 3 days off.
Okay.
So in like 2 days, I just hit up a bunch of people I knew in Paris, or like friends of friends, and set up a couple pop-up shows. So that we just went for a little like mini getaway.
That's awesome.
In the
That's
city
so
of love.
fun. What what do you do in England? Did it feel any different, or was it like an American show?
I mean, they were like, oh well, British people don't they laugh at a different cadence of humor, like whereas American comedies, like the punchline is like the noun at the end.
Mm-hmm.
Theirs is a little more woven into the setup, so to speak.
Sure.
So, but I didn't find that it was like a major like that show was great. I think that they absorb more American comedy now online, that it's not completely foreign to them.
Right.
So it was fine. I mean, the non-English speaking countries like, Berlin and Amsterdam and Belgium, they were like it was a little bit of a disconnection, but again, they're comedy fans that have access.
Yeah. Did you have any trouble? Like, were you ever on stage telling a joke and you're like, oh, that was that's a reference these people in Germany aren't going to get?
Exactly. I think I had a joke where I said Walmart in the joke, and I had to be like, what's your Walmart or something? And they were like, Aldi's. And I was like, oh shit, well, we have Aldi's too, so that works.
Okay.
So it was like little quick fixes like that, but you have to do your homework. You have to like,
right.
Go through your act with a fine tooth comb and be like,
how big were these rooms?
Between like, I'd say between like 700 and like 2,500.
Wow.
Yeah.
Have you done a lot of 1,000+ theaters?
No, I mean, only with him, honestly.
Okay. What's that like?
It depends on the theater, but like some are very long theaters and some are very high. But it's crazy because just like, I mean, anybody who's done a theater before, it's a weird thing to explain, but like you start to think about how sound waves take a while to like get to the stage. Huh. Like in a comedy club, everything's intimate, low ceilings. Yeah. So it's like the laughs are just right there. Mm-hmm. But you'll tell a joke that's like a B bit, and it'll get like this roaring laughter that comes in a couple seconds, like after the punchline. So you think you're like having this, you're murdering, but it's just like a tepid laughter,
Huh. Interesting.
And obviously the acoustics of the theater varies too. Like when they're like the Wilbur in Boston is like it's high and it's but it's not very deep, so the laughs kind of just fall on top of you.
Okay.
So you just have to go a little bit slower, I'd say.
Huh.
If you're doing like a 10-minute set, 20-minute set, you got to cut. You might have to cut.
Would you rather do 1,000-seater or 100-seater?
I'd probably 100-seater just for the
the intimacy and
exactly, because like if a joke bombs in front of 2,000 people, that's 2,000 people being like, remove that from your set now. 100 people, you're like, maybe I didn't say something right. You have more excuses,
Yeah, exactly. That's so funny. All right, well, we got to wrap this up. Tell us about your comedy special.
Yeah, check it out. I filmed it at the Comedy Connection in East Providence, which is is the premier club. It's the only comedy club in Rhode Island. I did it there, and then I released it. Had Jason Katz and Ryan Dever direct it, edit it. Who they do like pretty much everyone's special now, so they weren't cheap. But it was on it's on Mark Norman's YouTube. He kindly let me upload it there because I have a pathetic YouTube following. So
have you seen an uptick since you put it up there?
I mean, I've got like some subscribers on YouTube, which I got to get more active on, but definitely a lot more people saw it than would have seen it. So
nice.
I feel like having a guy like that kind of vouch for me and put it on his platform, it definitely helps out a lot, because it's like it's basically like how comics were on Comedy, like his YouTube is my Comedy Central,
right? Yeah,
you know what I mean? And it's like,
what's the name of the special?
It's called Mother of the Year, and it's I have a little chunk about.
I've seen your act. Yeah,
good old Ma Duke. So, but yeah, it's fun. I mean, after you see your own special, you kind of like you see the missed opportunities where you could have like put another bid, or you could have delivered a little better. But I'm proud of it, and just on to the next.
That's awesome. And how's Massachusetts treating you? What's
It's good.
new? What's
It,
going the rest of
I like it.
2024?
Well, my girlfriend, she's also a producer. She produces a comedy festival in New Bedford called the Whale City Comedy Festival. So
Okay.
I've helped her kind of like give her a template, and she was producing shows before I met her, so she was doing like a monthly show.
Okay.
So yeah, it's her first year was great. So follow that too.
What time of year is that? That's in the fall, right?
Labor Day week. She does hers Labor Day weekend.
Nice.
Yeah,
You
it's
guys
all over
love the
South Coast
holiday
Mass.
weekends.
Yeah,
What's that?
it's all over the South Coast of Mass. So there's like,
Okay.
by the Cape, kind of.
Yeah. Cool. All right, Doug, this has been terrific. Thanks so much for your time. We'll be back next Monday, everybody. Always Booking Comedy. Tune in every week. We're gonna close this down.
All right.
Oops, that was from a long time ago. Welcome, Doug.